And it's now my pleasure to call upon Paul Andersen, our chairperson, and Byron Holland, CEO. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Carolyn. As Carolyn mentioned, my name is Paul Andersen. I've been involved with CIRA for about 10 years. It's great to be back in Vancouver. We haven't been here since 2008. I do travel quite a bit, and I always enjoy the hospitality and the beauty of this city. And for some reason, whenever I come, the weather is always so wonderful. I hear about iffy weather sometimes in this city, so it's always so wonderful. Anyways, welcome to the annual general meeting of members of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. This is an exciting opportunity for those of you who are .ca members to participate in the governance of CIRA and the .ca domain name space. CIRA is a membership-based organization, and I would like to highlight the fact the membership is free and open to anybody. All you need is a .ca domain name. This is a direct and tangible way that you can help shape the internet in Canada. For those of you who are not .ca members, this will provide you with a chance to learn more about the work CIRA does in the Canadian internet space and around the world. I do hope that by the end of today's event, those of you who are not a member will consider becoming a member. We have many CIRA staff available in the room today to help you do that. Feel free to approach any of them during any one of the breaks or during our reception. Before we get started, I would like to introduce my fellow 2010 CIRA board members. I would ask them to rise and remain standing when their name is called. First, your elected directors, Rick Andersen, Carrie Brown, Jim Gray, they're all in different order than I thought they'd be, so they're Louise McDonald, Lynn McEnroy, Ross Rader, Barry Schell, Tom Williams, and finally Victoria Withers. I'd also like to note three of our ex officio board members, John Demko, who's a fellow Vancouver citizen who you heard about earlier and managed the .ca when he was at UBC in the early days of the internet, and maybe just another round of applause for all that help he did in those early days. Thanks. Also joining us is Heather Dryden, who is the representative for Industry Canada on the board. Hiding. Thank you, over there. And finally, of course, Byron Holland, our CEO and president, who also sits on our board as an ex officio member. All of the board members will be present today throughout the day, and I encourage you to approach any of us during the break or at the networking reception following the day's event. A highlight of our events such as this are where we can have frank one-on-one discussions with our community. Before we move on to the business of today, though, I do have a few more housekeeping items I need to take care of. As there are some items we will need to vote on today, I would like you to briefly review the voting procedures we will use today. As a membership-based organization, only CIRA members may vote, and those of us who are joining us via the webcast are also able to ask questions and will receive instructions for how to do so from the webcast moderators. Members who are joining us via the webcast are also able to vote. Now, for those of you in the room, when a vote takes place, we ask everyone to remain in the room and seated for a moment. Members may vote by raising their voting card, and I'd ask that you could all find one. It was in the AGM kit you received today. It looks something like this, so if you could please have it handy. When you vote, please hold your card up high until I ask you to put it down so as to allow our staff to do the count and make sure that the tabulation is complete and correct. And for those of you joining us via the webcast, when a vote is called, you will see a question appear in the box toward the bottom of your screen. Simply click on the selection and your vote will automatically be registered. Now, as there may be some delay on the webcast, I would ask those on the webcast to vote as quickly as you can so that we can ensure that all participants' votes are counted. In accordance with our bylaws, Michael Stewart, right here, CIRA's General Counsel, will act as Secretary, and I will act as Chair. Michael has advised me earlier that we have the required quorum of 100 members present in the room and online. And with that, I'd like to declare the meeting duly constituted. And we can now proceed with the business at hand. Each of you should have received a copy of the agenda through email notices sent to members on August 4th, 2011. And you also find a copy of the agenda in the AGM kit you received today at check-in. Unless I hear any objections, I would like to proceed with the agenda as distributed. Thank you. Minutes of our last meeting, which was held on September 21st, 2010, were available through all members on our website as of August 2nd, 2011. And a copy is also included in your kit, much like this, just to if you could have a look. If there are no objections at this time, I would like to verify the meetings of our previous meeting as correct. Looking to our webcast. Hearing none, the meetings stand verified. Thank you very much. As chair, I am now proud to present the report of CIRA's Board of Directors for this past year. Whereas the 2010 fiscal year was one characterized by change, this past year, in my opinion, was one characterized by progress and connection. CIRA has made significant progress in putting in place policies and technologies needed to be among the world's leading domain name registries. We are quickly becoming a widely regarded and respected thought leader in Canada internationally and on many internet-related issues. Your board continues to play an important role in leading CIRA's growth and development. I would like to address the following areas where I think we've made significant progress: our mandate, the leadership role in which CIRA has taken in Canada and around the world, and community engagement. First, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about CIRA's mandate and activities. As you know, the core of our work is in the management of the .ca registry, and we aim to carry out that work in an effective and efficient manner. Many of you know we maintain the underlying domain name system, or critical DNS infrastructure, that supports .ca. We recognize this great responsibility that comes with this mandate. It is always our primary focus, and at all times we carry out these activities in a manner that will ensure the integrity of the .ca domain. CIRA is, however, involved in activities that go beyond the technical operation of the registry. We undertake activities that foster growth in the Canadian Internet community, and we also actively participate in the forums that govern the Internet. To be a leading registry, it is critical we continue to represent our stakeholders, domestically and internationally. Our contributions of technical resources and experience, along with financial support, have positioned us in a role of significant influence within the global Internet community. CIRA staff and board members have been deeply involved in key international roles in the past and continue to do so today. I am the treasurer of the American Registry for Internet Numbers Board of Trustees, the organization responsible for managing the numbering resources for this region. Byron Holland, our CEO, is also the vice chair of the Country Code Name Supporting Organization since 2009, and he is also the chair of the ICANN Strategic and Operational Planning Working Group. And CIRA board member Heather Dryden from Industry Canada is ICANN's Government Advisory Committee chair, the key link between governments and the ICANN board, which played a crucial role in the development of the newly announced GTLD program. CIRA operates the .ca domain space as a key public resource on behalf of all Canadians. And since the Internet belongs to all of us, we believe that its future should be driven by the many people and groups who have a stake in it. Globally, the Internet is governed by a loose-knit group of NGOs, governments, the private sector, and technical communities. In essence, the people who have a stake in making sure the Internet is successful are the ones who are involved in shaping its future. This approach to governing the Internet works, and we at CIRA, both board and staff, think it is critical that it remains this way for the Internet to grow as an economic, cultural, and social resource. In this past year, CIRA has taken a leading role in guiding the conversation around Internet governance in this country. In July 2010, then Industry Minister Clement announced the Digital Economy Consultation. It was a national consultation on the future of Canada's online economy. CIRA has made through a submission consisting of 19 recommendations, including the development of a DNS Community Emergency Response Team, ongoing support for the International Internet Governance Forum, and endorsing government-wide adoption of IPv6. IPv6 is the next generation numbering system for the Internet. Not unexpectedly, the recent federal election has caused a delay in the release of the digital economy strategy, but the speech from the throne has made reference to it. And I am hopeful that we will see many of our recommendations adopted. If you are a .ca member, you've hopefully noticed a few changes in the way we communicate and engage with you. CIRA is a membership-driven organization, and that means members are at the very heart of all our activities. In this past year, we've enhanced the value of being a .ca member, and we've begun listening to our members more actively. And I know Byron will speak of what we're doing for members, but it's all part of enhancing our governance processes. The results of our efforts have been astounding. Applications for positions on the board have increased fivefold from 2009 to 2010, and attendance at our AGM in Toronto last year was 125% higher than it was in 2009. And from the looks of the room, we've done even better this year. So thank you for that. On the technical side, we've made very significant steps towards becoming a leading-edge registry. I'm proud to say that our own website, CIRA.ca, became IPv6 reachable for World IPv6 Day in June, positioning CIRA to continue to be a leader in Canada with regard to IPv6 adoption. And IPv6 is very important to adopt so as to allow the continued growth of the internet as we know it today. Moving forward, CIRA's operations team will be working to make the remainder of our IP6 systems IPv6 compliant in the very near future. We have also made progress towards implementing DNSSEC to the DNS. DNSSEC is a set of extensions used to add an additional layer of security to the DNS. When complete, users will have a greater level of security and assurance to protect them against malicious actions against .ca domain names. CIRA will continue to work over the coming year to deploy DNSSEC. And we continue to contribute to the development of the Bind 10 software. It is the software that essentially holds the internet together by running the underlying DNS system. Moving on, we've also made significant strides in giving back to the Canadian internet community. Not only did we hold the first ever Canadian Internet Forum, where we engaged interested Canadians from all regions of the country in discussion on issues related to the digital economy, but we also handed out our first .ca Impact Awards. These awards celebrate excellence in the Canadian internet space and were awarded at the MESH conference in Toronto in May of this year. And I believe a Vancouver group, I think Steve Andersen from Open Media is here. He was actually a recipient. He was here earlier. Is he still here? He was in the back. Congratulations to Steve. CIRA has also continued to support numerous organizations in their effort to make the internet and the world a better place. Through our work with the Media Awareness Network and other organizations like Random Acts of Kindness, I can proudly say that CIRA has become instrumental to the development of the internet in Canada. I am proud of the leadership the CIRA board has shown over these past years and continues to show. We continue to build our capacity and provide strategic leadership to the CIRA team. The group that has been brought together as the CIRA board has come from many regions of Canada and are representatives of Canadian business, technology, academic, government, and not-for-profit worlds. We are, I believe, a high-functioning and very effective board of directors, and this is evidenced by the tremendous year-over-year growth in both the sheer number of applications to join the board, but also in the quality of the candidates we have received as well. The CIRA board is an incredibly professional and passionate team dedicated to making the .ca the envy of the world, and we appreciate the support you, the Canadian internet community, have provided to us. I truly believe that every Canadian has a stake in the work that CIRA does, and the fact that you've come out today shows me that the work we do is not only incredibly important, but is noticed and appreciated, and for that I thank you. Thank you very much. That concludes my report. I'd ask Byron Holland to come on and present the President's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And again, I hope you all enjoyed Zittrain's discussion. I certainly thought it was an excellent description of the history, of the place, of the importance of the internet, and I think Jonathan's ability to weave humor into what can sometimes be somewhat obtuse subject matter was really, really excellent. Anyway, last year, CIRA celebrated its 10th anniversary of registering .ca domain names. In many industries, 10 years would be considered a significant amount of time. But obviously in the internet world, it could well be described as an eternity. Over the past 10 years, an awful lot has changed. Back then, CIRA was operating out of the boardroom of the Canary offices in Ottawa, and there were only about 140,000 domain names registered a decade ago. The internet, while certainly showing its promise, had not reached the status of one of the greatest economic and communications drivers in the history of mankind. Today, we have over 1.7 million domain names registered, and we'll reach 2 million before our fiscal year end is out. The internet's become critical to the fabric of Canadian society, as well as almost every society around the world. And the growth in the number of users of the internet, the number of websites, and in its importance in all aspects of society has been extraordinary. And it has been CIRA's role not just to keep pace with this growth, but to try to stay at least a few steps ahead of it. And I'm happy to report that in that regard, I think we've been quite successful. Anniversaries of any sort, especially those with some significance, are often characterized by some level of introspection, a taking stock of where we've been, and of course, a look forward to where we're headed. And this has certainly been the case for CIRA over the past year. We know where we want to be. We're striving to make .ca the #1 domain choice for all Canadians. And we certainly believe we know how to get there. We operate in a very fast-paced environment in one of the most connected countries in the world. In fact, recent research shows that Canadians' internet usage is nearly double what the world average is. So with this in mind, it's not surprising that .ca has been experiencing significant growth in a very competitive environment. We've achieved an annual growth rate in 2011 of just over 14% and a renewal rate of domains of just shy of 80%. Tremendous growth, such as CIRA has been experiencing over the past few years, means that sometimes we have to make changes in the way that we operate. What does it take to become the best at what you do? What will it take for CIRA to become the preferred top-level domain choice for all Canadians? I believe it's going to take 4 things. We need the right tools, we need the right people, we need the right focus, and we need the right policies and procedures as a top-level domain. So let me explain that in a little more detail. CIRA is an evolving organization. We are making changes to allow us to be on the leading edge of a number of technologies and internet technologies, and as such, we have made progress towards making sure we have the right tools in place. Really, at the core of our business, it's the registry, and the tools within that are critical to us. Many of you probably remember that last year, about this time, October 2010, we streamlined the processes and the policies for registering a .ca domain and launched a new registry system for .ca. And that really is the core, that is the heart of our business, is the registry itself. That's the primary engine. And this was all done in consultation with our .ca customers and channel partners, our registrars, so that their needs were reflected in the end product. Our former registry system was built over a decade ago and simply could not accommodate the level of growth that .ca has been experiencing. The new registry, an EPP-based system, or an industry standards system now, is much more user-friendly and certainly conforms to industry expectations and norms. We are effectively positioning ourselves to be an absolutely world-class registry. In 2010, we continued to work on implementing IPv6, as Paul has mentioned. And this is a critical technology initiative for CIRA. And as you're probably aware, this past February, we witnessed the allocation of the final IPv4 blocks. It's now critical that we all work towards adopting IPv6, and certainly CIRA is doing its part in that transition. We are, in short, becoming one of the world's leading country code top-level domains. And if you've been following CIRA for a few years, you'll likely have noticed that we're a lot more visible than we have been in the past. Why is that? Well, because we want to enhance our corporate reputation, both domestically and internationally, to be a thought leader in our industry and to provide value for our members, and to better encourage and engage all of our stakeholders to participate in this multi-stakeholder model that the internet is. Last year, in doing that, last year we launched a brand new identity, brand identity, part of which you can see manifested just in the slides and the materials that you have in front of you. And this brand identity carries through all of our materials. It includes a new website, which not only has a new look and feel, but is much more friendly, much easier to use for members and .ca holders, as well as Canadians in general. We've also engaged in an advertising campaign, something that we really haven't done in the past. And we're much more conscious about reaching out to our stakeholders. We've improved our communications to members and are making sure to tell them more than ever about what we're working on, what we're up to, and really importantly, how you can get involved. We've developed a new look and feel exclusively for our member communications. And in January, we sent out our first quarterly member e-newsletter, which brings together all the latest news of what's happening in CIRA, which is actually quite a bit, and what we're doing on the international stage, how we participate. And we launched a new member portal as well, where members can manage all of your information, as well as access a weekly summary of all the latest CIRA and global internet news from around the world and around the web. We also recently held our first regional member event. This was actually a very well-attended event in Calgary in June. We'll be going to Montreal this fall for another event. So we're trying to get out and speak to our members on a more frequent basis in their environments and in their hometowns. So another really major initiative that CIRA engaged in was the first ever Canadian Internet Forum, or CIF. And this was a national consultation on the link between the digital economy and digital literacy and the internet. As part of that, we held regional consultations in communities across Canada, and we also facilitated an online discussion about internet-related issues of interest to, I think, all Canadians. And some of the key issues that we heard a lot about, some won't surprise you, some may, but certainly safety and security were at the top of the list. The development of a Canadian vision for the internet, and a perennial favorite, the cost and speed of broadband in Canada. And that one probably comes as no surprise to this group. The consultations wrapped up with a national event held in Ottawa and was webcast across the country this past February. I'll be presenting the results of the CIF to the United Nations Coordinated Internet Governance Forum in Nairobi, Kenya next week, as a matter of fact. So CIRA will continue the conversation we started last year with the CIF, and actually in just a couple of weeks we'll be launching the 2012 version of the CIF. This time we'll have a greater emphasis on engaging Canadians online in a new, fully interactive forum. So I really hope that all of you will participate and join us online this coming October, next month. So what do I mean by the right people? Clearly we're a knowledge-based or a knowledge-centric company. And in order to do that, in order to get the best people, we really need to have the best policies, the best HR policies, and getting the best people helps us strive for operational excellence. This means really creating a high-performance workplace culture. It also means greater focus on the areas in which we didn't necessarily have some expertise in the past, like the communications and marketing areas. How do we do this? By ensuring CIRA is a leading technical employer, both for technology folks as well as not-for-profit environments in the Ottawa area, which is where we're based. By tightening up our recruiting procedures to make sure that we are finding absolutely the right people and making sure that we have a truly engaging and empowering environment for the kinds of knowledge workers that we seek to bring into the fold. And there's one last piece to explain. We are also in the process of changing our policies and procedures generally. With the rewrite of the .ca registry, we took the opportunity to review and recreate many of the associated business rules around domains. This means that .ca registrars and registrants have a more streamlined and simpler process for registering .ca domains. I think any of you who have registered a .ca domain 5 or more years ago versus very recently would agree that we've made the process much simpler, much more user-friendly, and much more efficient. In fact, CIRA was able to dramatically reduce the number of contact points and interactions involved in that whole process. So what's the result? In 2008, CIRA did a customer satisfaction survey, and we found that 36% of respondents indicated that the process to register a .ca domain name was, quote, very easy. Not the number we're looking for. Post-redesign, we're just shy of 55% of respondents who found it very easy, and then there's easy under that. So the majority of folks find registering a .ca either easy or very easy to do. I think we also have the focus, the vision, the tools, the policies and procedures in place to be the #1 choice for Canadians, and I know we're going to do it. In fact, we're here to talk about last year's results, but what we've seen in the first quarter of this year is actually quite remarkable. For the first time ever in absolute numbers, we're seeing that more .cas are being registered than .coms in the Canadian landscape, which is a pretty profound achievement at this thing. All right. Thanks. So just a quick slide, or a quick side note to let you in on another little secret, actually. I'll be making a major announcement regarding CIRA later on in the day. So if the prospect of a free drink at the networking reception isn't enough to entice you to stick around for the whole day, then I hope this will be. To become a world-class registry means adopting the best practices and policies and procedures. And in the past year, we have done just that with some of our accounting policies. So in the next few minutes, or maybe more than a few, I want to talk about the financial aspects of our business. And we have made some significant changes. So whether you're a finance jockey or a spreadsheet jockey, I'd ask that you really pay attention to some of the elements that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes, because they are critical to how we report financially on the company. And it's particularly important because the changes we've made are significant. And we've made significant investments in the registry this year and in the previous year, as discussed. We've also made a change to the way that we account for revenue earned from .ca domain name registrations. I'll explain both as I now present the 2011 fiscal statements, financial statements. In the early days of the modern internet, it was appropriate to expense investments in a registry, such as CIRA's in the period incurred, given that there was uncertainty that this investment would have long-term value. Clearly, the internet has changed and has become an integral part of modern society. CIRA now recognizes that its most recent investments in the .ca registry represents an asset that will serve our business for several years. As such, we analyze the development costs pertaining to the internally generated registry software incurred in the 2010 and 2011 fiscal years and capitalize them as an intangible asset to be amortized and brought into expense over its estimated useful life of 5 years. We've made one more major change. Since its inception, CIRA has recognized upfront a full 12 months of service revenue when a .ca domain name is registered, renewed, or on its anniversary date. This is not what we would call best practice. We've adopted a more accurate and conservative approach It is an approach, in fact, that is required by Canadian generally accepted accounting principles, commonly called GAAP. Other leading registries, including VeriSign, the .com registry, follow similar accounting procedures. We now recognize revenue prorated over the particular term of the services as denoted in the registration or renewal. This new approach better reflects when CIRA actually earns the revenue. So this has meant our revenues have had to be restated, and I'll explain this as I present the highlights of the auditor's report and the financial statements. The restatement of our revenues means that comparative information from the 2010 fiscal year has had to be changed to reflect the restatement. This has resulted in the following changes: a decrease in our registration revenues to more slowly recognize the revenue, a decrease in our accumulated net assets, as in past years we had over-recognized revenue, and an increase in our deferred revenue or unearned revenue. In each case, the accounting policies adopted will change the recognition or allocation of the expense and the revenue, but have absolutely no impact on CIRA's cash position. That's critical to note. These changes are fully consistent with the accounting treatment used by world-class registries. If you'd like to see more information, you'll find the financial statements enclosed in the back flap of the annual report document that you should have in front of you. The financial impact of the restatement is outlined in detail in Note 15 of the audited financial statements. I'm also pleased to report that CIRA received an unqualified or completely clean opinion from our external auditors, KPMG. In lay terms, this means that our financial statements are favorable and clean and are fairly presented. I'll now present the statement of financial position and the asset side of our balance sheet. Cash increased by approximately $1.5 million year over year. Note this year-end difference was transferred entirely to our investment account subsequent to the year-end. The remainder of current assets is comprised of accounts receivable, largely interest receivable on our investment and year-end prepaid expenditures. At March 31, 2011, our restricted investments, or RIs, were slightly less than $16.5 million. RIs are set aside under board direction for the following purposes. First, to prudently hold cash amount equivalent to the balance in deferred revenue. That is, funds received for domain registrations for which CIRA has not yet provided the service and thus not yet earned the revenue. Second, to accumulate sufficient resources so CIRA can be in a position to replace or invest in additional capital assets and infrastructure as warranted through longer-term planning and a longer-term horizon. Third, if necessary, to act as working capital so CIRA can continue to pay suppliers in a timely fashion and, of course, meet the ongoing salary commitment to our employees. And finally, as contingency funds for emergency requirements such as business interruption, disasters, or other unforeseen adverse circumstances. However, RIs are generally for future needs. As such, RIs are invested conservatively by management with a significant emphasis upon capital preservation and with the assistance of an external investment advisor, TD Waterhouse, and audit committee oversight. Capital assets of approximately $3.1 million and $2.6 million in the 2010 fiscal year has been broken out and classified between property and equipment and intangible assets. This is largely a result of the restatement, which retroactively capitalized, in aggregate, approximately $1.35 million of costs incurred pertaining to the internally developed .ca registry software I mentioned earlier. CIRA management estimates that the .ca registry will have a useful life of 5 years. Management reviews its assumptions on the useful lives of assets every year. On the liability and net asset side of the balance sheet, we have accounts payable and accrued liabilities, which were incurred as part of the normal course of business and equate to $1.9 million as of March 31st, 2011. We've separated out customer deposits from registrars for better disclosure on funds being held on their account to fund the ongoing registration and renewal transactions. Deferred revenue for the 2010 fiscal year was restated approximately $11 million from $6 million. As of March 31st, 2011, deferred revenue, current and long-term, was approximately $13.2 million in aggregate. As mentioned, the deferred revenue represents unearned revenue and an obligation for CIRA to provide future services to registrants. CIRA anticipates that services it provides over the next 12 months, the current 2012 fiscal year, will result in recognizing approximately $8.9 million of the deferred balance. The deferred balance of approximately $4.5 million, long-term deferred, will be recognized in future fiscal years starting after March 31st, 2012. Next, we have net assets for the 2010 fiscal year. Internally restricted assets have decreased by just over $4.9 million over the previously reported 2010 fiscal year to reflect the cumulative impact to our financial results between the original and the new method of revenue recognition, reducing the cumulative amount of revenue earned by CIRA in that period. Invested in capital assets has increased by $729,000 to reflect the capitalization of the .ca registry costs that were previously expensed in the 2010 fiscal year. 2011 fiscal year net assets has increased to approximately $7.8 million, reflecting the results of the 2011 fiscal year operations and unrealized losses on restricted investments. Now, let's turn our attention to the statement of operations. Total revenue for the 2010 fiscal year was restated to approximately $11.2 million versus approximately $12.1 million. This is as a result of the change in the revenue recognition policy. Total operating expenses for the 2010 fiscal year were reduced by $729,000 as a result of capitalizing development costs incurred on the .ca registry rewrite. As such, with the net effect of the two items restated, the previously reported surplus of $593,000 was reduced by $196,000 to just over $397,000. Total revenue for the 2011 fiscal year under the new revenue recognition amounts to $13.3 million. This is almost 19%, or in real terms, $2.1 million more than restated 2010 fiscal year total revenues. The 2011 fiscal year operating surplus grew to $1.3 million as revenue growth outstripped the year-over-year increase in total operating expenses of nearly $1.2 million. Salaries and benefits for 2011 were $4.8 million, up from $4.2 in 2010. And the end of fiscal 2011, CIRA had 46 full-time employees, up slightly from 43 in 2010. Consulting costs of $1.7 million represents consulting for all areas of the organization, including specific projects. Products and media relates to promotions and marketing campaigns, media monitoring, advertising, sponsorship activities such as the Canadian Internet Forum we spoke about recently, and the Community Investment Program. Computer operations and networking amounted to approximately $1.3 million, And CIRA rents space for computer equipment at several locations across Canada for registry and DNS services. These locations house hardware for the main system, backup equipment, and DNS zone servers, as well as others. Software subscriptions, worldwide DNS services, and support expenses are also included in this expense category. Office and general administration reflect the costs associated with running CIRA operations, such as rent, office expenses, insurance, bank charges, and so on. Depreciation expense has been split out between depreciation of property and equipment and amortization of intangible assets. In the 2011 fiscal year, the aggregate depreciation amortization expense totaled to just over $1 million. And this concludes the presentation of the 2011 financial statements. Thank you. We'll take questions after the appointment of the auditors, and I'd like to invite our chair, Paul, back to the podium to do just that. Thanks.
Byron. Thank you, Byron. To follow up on Byron's presentation of CIRA financials, I'd just direct your attention to the financial statements that were included in your report. And I'm just going to read a section from our auditor KPMG's statement on the report. To all members of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, which comprise the statement of financial position as of March 31st, 2011. The statements of operations, changes in net assets and cash flows for the year ended, and notes comprising a summary of significant accounting policies and other explanatory information. And I'll just jump down to our opinion section. We believe that the audit evidence we've obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide a basis for our audit opinion. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly, in all material aspects, the financial position of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority as at March 31st, 2011, and its results of operations and its cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with the Canadian Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. I'd now like to move on to our next agenda item, which is the appointment of CIRA's auditors for the fiscal year. As per our notices emailed to CIRA members August 4th, CIRA's Audit Committee is recommending KPMG to hold office until the close of the next annual general meeting. I'd now like to have a motion to appoint the firm KPMG as CIRA's auditors for our current fiscal year. And the motion would be as follows. That KPMG be appointed as auditors of the Canadian Internet Registration Authority to hold office until the next annual general meeting or until their successors are duly appointed and the board of directors be authorized to establish the remuneration of the auditors. Would somebody like to move the motion and do so by holding up their voting card? Sir, right there, I saw first. Your name, please? Just Robert Smith, and just hold up for a second as a staff member. And somebody to second? Ma'am, your name? Marie Demal, thank you. Just hold 1 second. We have a motion that's been moved. I'll call for any discussion or questions. If you have a question or discussion, could you please approach one of the mics sitting in the aisles right there or online, type in your question. Just give a second for our webcast. Seeing no questions from the webcast or in the room, I'd call for a vote. Those online, if you can please indicate now by clicking at the bottom. And for all those in the room, if you could hold up your voting card nice and high if you're in favor. Waiting for my counters to catch it. Okay, you can put them down. Any opposed? Abstentions? Just give me a second. I'm just waiting for the results of the webcast. Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, I call the motion carried. Thank you very much. And with that, we will now proceed to questions from members. I'll just introduce some people joining me on stage. We have Byron Holland, our President and CEO. Also joining us is Paul Havey, our Director of Finance Administration. We also have in the audience Michael Stewart, our General Counsel, Jacques Latour, our Director of IT, and Dave Fowler, our Director of Marketing and Communications. So for those in the room who would like to ask a question, I would ask for you to approach one of the microphone stands in the room. If you do require assistance, though, please just put up your hand and one of our staff will be happy to assist you. For those of you joining us via the webcast, you can type in your question via the chat function of the screen, and CIRA staff will ask your questions in the room on your behalf. I would ask for the benefit of those in the room and those online that before you ask a question, please state your name and your affiliation. And as necessary, I will be alternating as best I can between questions from the members on the webcast and here in the room. And as this is a meeting of members, we will try and give first priority to questions from CIRA members, but anyone is welcome to ask a question. Don't all come up at once. Seems to be no question. Oh. Are you approaching the mic, sir, or just going for a seat? No. And no questions from the webcast? Well, I'll give one last call for microphones if there are no questions. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you again for participating so far. We do. Oh, somebody. Oh, at the last minute, as staff have indicated, it's amazing. If you all look back, there's a little question mark. It lights up to let me know there's an online question. Richard Wong, our staff member here, invented. So we have a question from the webcast staff.
Yeah, we're waiting for the question to come in.
Oh. Unfortunately, the questions are typed, depending on how fast someone can type.
The question is, why did it take this long to restate? And this question comes from Andrew Escobar.
Okay, thank you for the question. I'll turn over to Byron and Paul. We need a mic on, please. Could you repeat the question a bit louder as well? It was very hard to hear on stage.
Could you, repeat the question, please?
The question from Andrew Escobar is, why did it take this long to restate? And he then continues, common GAAP practice is to recognize revenue and expense.
So that's a very good question. I think the issue is, as soon as we uncovered the issue, we dealt with it immediately. So Paul Havey is our new head of finance, and KPMG is our new auditor as of last year. They worked together in working through the process of the restatement, and effectively, as soon as it was determined that we should move towards the revenue recognition process that we have right now, we engaged in it immediately. I don't know, Paul, if you have any other comment.
No, I have nothing else to add. That's good.
Oh, question from over here, please.
Firstly, my name is Curtis Davey. I am a non-member. However, I'm curious to know what efforts, if any, CIRA is making to consult or work with the Conservative government about their newly proposed plan being pushed through this fall regarding internet security and the privacy of Canadians in the anti-spying bill.
Byron, did you want to address first, or I'll follow up maybe?
Sure, and clearly that will likely impact us all. However, we have a very specific mandate to run the registry and the DNS, and that is the core of our mandate. So we are focused really just on those issues. We're not an advocacy organization, so many of the issues in there are not elements that specifically pertain to what we actually do on a day-to-day basis. We watch and monitor it, obviously with significant interest, but generally speaking, it's not impacting the domain space that we manage and operate.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to close the microphones and the online if there's no further questions. Give one last check to our online here. No one in progress? Okay, well, thank you all for your participation today. I speak for the entire board and the organization that we enjoyed the interaction that we have with the community through our public Q&A sessions, this AGM, and of course at our networking event later today. For me personally, being able to meet many of you today and hearing your thoughts and concerns helps myself and my fellow board members greatly as we tackle the strategic issues brought before us at every meeting. We, of course, will have our agreements and disagreements on issue, but it's important to hear as many voices as we can in these events. Again, thank you. And before we close the meeting, I'd like to first thank CIRA staff for the hard work they've done over this past year. I have the privilege of knowing many of the staff closely, and I can say without hesitation to the membership that your staff are a team of truly dedicated people that firmly believe in the vision of CIRA and the .ca domain name. I encourage you all to take a moment before you leave to today speak, as many of them are here today, and get to know them more, and more importantly, thank them for their tireless dedication to the organization. Perhaps we could just thank them now as well, if you don't mind. I'd also just finally like to thank my fellow board members for their support and participation throughout the year. I'd like to, if I could just indulge, take a moment to specifically point two of them out who, unfortunately, their term on the board has come to an end and they've chosen not to return, specifically Lynn McEnroy and Ross Rader. Combined, I was trying to do the math there, I think they've done about 16, 17 years of joint service. They've been with the organization for a long time, have been tireless and dedicated volunteers to the organization. Lynn McEnroy has served as our vice chair, chair of our technical oversight committee, and just will be finishing off as audit committee chair. Lynn, thank you very much for all your help throughout the years, and it's been a pleasure to know you as a friend and a colleague, and I look forward to, of course, keeping in touch. And Ross Rader has been our technical oversight chair previously, also ran our governance committee for a few years, and is currently starting a great new venture that I encourage you all to talk to him about, a policy development committee that CIRA has been working on to look at some of these issues. And he will be staying on a little bit to assist with that, just a little bit, but unfortunately the board, and of course Ross, it's been a pleasure working with you, and if I just ask if everyone could give a strong hand, maybe stand up so you can be on. And with that, I believe it is now time for us to adjourn the official AGM portion of today's festivities.